I'm going to jump out on a limb right now and say they're the best team in the playoffs right now.
Wow.
The way this front four yesterday controlled the line of scrimmage, or 2 days ago, I'm sorry, controlled the line of scrimmage, it was unreal. You know, it was so much for this defensive coordinator to get pressure with his front four. He can play zone coverage all day. You can get in all the throwing windows for Kirk Cousins. You don't have to run man coverage and let Minnesota receivers beat you one-on-one. Minnesota got a touchdown early on the outside of Diggs, and it was like, no more. We're going to run zone. We're going to force you to throw in small pockets, and they couldn't. This defensive line played so great. They controlled the game. That was a highlight for me, for the 49ers. And then this offense, man, they can run the ball. They can throw the ball. Shanahan does a great job of not letting their receivers just sit outside and have to beat one-on-one coverage. He brings everything in tight, and he beats them with just schematically, you know. So the way he just designs his offense to just get open with the receivers, get open with Kittles in the tight end, and the way Kittles buys in and blocks in the running game, they believe in this coach. This team believes in their self, and that's why I believe they're the best team in the playoffs right now.
Well, and while I won't go as far as say they're the best team in the playoffs, I have been as big of a 49er doubter as anybody. I said before the year I didn't understand why they were picked by Vegas favorite to make the playoffs. I didn't believe in the quarterback, and at every benchmark, they have passed with flying colors. They've lost 3 times this year. Once was in overtime to Seattle. Once was on the final play of the game to Atlanta. Remember that? The Julio Jones play, was he in, was he not? And the other was the 20-17 slugfest in a monsoon against Baltimore. Those are the only, they could have won all those games. Meanwhile, they whooped Green Bay, annihilated them 37-8. They got revenge against Seattle, and they beat New Orleans in a shootout 48-46 in the Superdome. They have as good of a resume as anyone. First 8 weeks of the year, they were the best defense in the NFL other than the New England Patriots. The last half of the year, the defense was not nearly itself. What happened? Well, Quan Alexander, Jaquaski Tarter, D. Ford, 1 or 2 or all of them missed time over those final 8 games. This was the first game since week 8 that all those guys have been together, and not shockingly, the defense was dominant. And the other thing that I have to give San Francisco credit for, because they have, of all the quarterbacks, well, Tannehill's probably the worst quarterback left, but Rodgers, Mahomes, and Jimmy G, one of these 3 is not like the other. They have the worst quarterback of the 3 teams that are the true contenders for a Super Bowl, but they also might have the best coach. With respect to Andy Reid, with respect to Matt LaFleur and Mike Vrabel, Kyle Shanahan, pardon me, what he does schematically, offensively, because he has 3 viable running backs, a great tight end, and a capable quarterback, even if Jimmy G is going to throw it to you at least once a game, everyone seems to be running open. Like, guys, they are such a difficult team to defend. And with all that said, I'll probably pick against them again this coming week because I've been doing it all year.
And you like to stay consistent.
But I do like to stay consistent. But with that said, they don't have a clear-cut weakness right now other than, can you rattle Jimmy G and make him make some mistakes? He made some mistakes in this game, and they still rolled. Aside from the one Stephon Diggs play, the defense pitched basically a shutout, and the offense did enough to give them a comfortable margin the whole game.
And it's a fun team to watch. You like to watch what Kyle Shanahan is doing with that team.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers hosting Russell Wilson and the Seahawks from a frigid Lambeau. Told you it'd be cold, Nick.
Yep.
Picked this up in the 4th. Marshawn Lynch scored his 2nd touchdown on the night. Seattle gets within 5. It's 28-23. They would need to stop the Packers one more time to get the ball back, but Rodgers finds Devontae Adams for a big 3rd down conversion with 2:17 left. Packers would have to convert one more 3rd down to end the game, and so they convert one more 3rd down to end the game. Jimmy Graham with the 9-yard catch. Green Bay moving on to face the team we just talked about, the 49ers, in the NFC Championship game. That guy, Russell Wilson, is heading home. Here is Aaron Rodgers after the win.
One of those games where we know every possession is going to be really important, and it's going to be loud, but you know, this is where it gets really fun. There's only 4 teams left, and we're one of them, and we got a legitimate chance.
About as even keel as you can get up there on the podium. What was the key, Nick, to the Packers win last night?
One guy who's been there for over a decade and a few people who got there this year. The guy who's been there over a decade is Aaron Rodgers. If you watched Week 17 against Detroit, a very important game for Green Bay because the bye was on the line. They had the potential, maybe they could have been the 1 seed if San Francisco had lost, but they also could fall to the 3 line. Rodgers was missing every long pass he threw. Everything was an overthrow, overthrow, overthrow. And it was the culmination of 8 straight weeks of Rodgers playing very mediocre football. In this game, he was perfect. Not a single incompletion on balls that traveled more than 10 yards through the air. On third downs, they threw it on every 3rd and long, and he was perfect on that too. An actual perfect quarterback rating, and they trusted him at the end of the game to not give the ball back to Seattle. We're not just going to run, and then punt the ball away. 3rd and 8. We will trust you to find Davante Adams. And in fact, Davante said after the game, Rodgers checked out of the route. It was supposed to be a quick slant. He told Davante what route to run at the line of scrimmage, and that worked. And then the play to Jimmy Graham, which brings me to the other people that were the keys. Matt LaFleur did something Mike McCarthy often didn't do, which is at the end of games, not play the guy, trust him to win it for us. The last time Green Bay played Seattle in a playoff game, the conference championship game in 2014, the crushing loss when Green Bay had a big lead early that a lot of people thought was kind of the break point between Rodgers and McCarthy. McCarthy did not trust Aaron Rodgers consistently once they had a big lead. They kicked a lot of short field goals. They wouldn't go for 4. They wouldn't put the ball in Rodgers' hands in the critical moments, and they ended up losing this game. LaFleur put it in his hands at all the critical moments, and the last person who's also new is Preston Smith. When it looked like Seattle could mount a comeback, 3rd and 5, down 5, just the spot Seattle loves to live in, Preston Smith comes flying in off the edge to sack Russell Wilson. Seattle never touched the ball again. That's how Green Bay advances back to the conference championship game, Brandon.
You mentioned, I feel like LaFleur did a great job giving the ball to your best player and letting him win the game. That's what you need to do to win games in the playoffs. A guy who's been there before, a guy that you know, that you trust, that's not going to make a key mistake, put the ball in his hand, and, you know, Aaron Rodgers rewarded him. You know, I can pick up this 3rd and 8. I can pick up this 3rd and 9. But the key to this game for me was this defense. That's one thing Aaron Rodgers never had these past couple years, a defense that can step up and get stops when they needed to. You alluded to Preston Smith making big plays. Zadarius Smith making sacks at the beginning of the game. They had Russell Wilson running for his life the whole game trying to make throws on the run. So I feel like this defense, the way they stepped up, Jair Alexander challenging these guys on the outside, let everybody know, hey, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to have the LeBron syndrome anymore. Like, you're better than everybody, win it by yourself. Like, no, this guy needs help. We're going to get him help on the defensive end, and that's what's going to make sure that you guys can sum up wins in the playoffs. The defense played well. Now's the key to the win for me.
Nick, you had the Packers. You still have them in the Super Bowl. You've had it very early
Packers Chiefs was my preseason pick.
But you have had some questions about them over the last couple of weeks because of the way Aaron Rodgers has played. Aaron Rodgers reiterated his post-game press conference, as he has all season long. Look, no one really believed in us. It was nice to see the fans out there rooting for us. I don't know how many of them. Do you have more confidence in them? From what you saw yesterday, now that Aaron Rodgers has taken more of the sort of the front role in the win?
It was great to see Rodgers play a great game. He was also my preseason pick to win league MVP. He won't get a single MVP vote, and even if they did a 5-man ballot, he wouldn't get a single MVP vote. He was not very good the second half of the year. And had they lost this game, you'd say, okay, next year he turns 37. Are they going to have a bye again? They've only had 3 his whole time there. Are we in a different phase of his career? And the fact of the matter is we are in a different phase of his career. He's no longer the best player in the league, but he is still good enough to dial up what he dialed up against Seattle yesterday. And the other element to the game, and Seattle's just evidently going to keep doing this, is Seattle's commitment to futilely running the football. They call plays for the 2nd straight postseason like Blake Bortles is their quarterback. Like, they only can throw the ball when they have to.
They absolutely
Last year,
have to.
They lost to the Cowboys because their commitment to running the ball with no success. It was worse this year. In the playoffs this season, the Seattle Seahawks ran the ball with the running back 32 times. They gained 58 yards on those carries. One rush went for longer than 8 yards. Their best running back yesterday was Russell Wilson. Their best player yesterday was Russell Wilson. And every time they ran the ball, Green Bay, I'm sure, was like, thank you. We do not have to deal with Russell Wilson, because late in the game, Malik Turner had that drop. If he doesn't have that drop, because they now have to trust Russell Wilson, they might come back. But yeah, Green Bay's a flawed team. Green Bay's not a perfect team. But they're also now 1 game away from going to the Super Bowl when they have a decided advantage at quarterback in that game with Rodgers versus Jimmy G.
It's almost like the Seahawks are stuck in time when we run the ball and we play defense, not in this new school of football. These guys at quarterback is airing the ball out. They're putting points on the board. And when you're running, and especially when you're not gaining yards on the ground, Tennessee is a different story.
Yep.
You know, Derrick Henry is their bell cow, and you trust Derrick Henry more than you trust Tannehill. You put the ball in Russell Wilson's hands if you're the Seahawks, and let him just make plays. Put him in the gun, let him run around, make plays all over the field. So I feel like Pete Carroll has to have a coordinator that's going to come in and get out of his philosophy saying we need to run the ball even when we can't. If it's working, go do it. But if it's not, you have to change it up.
I'm glad you mentioned Tennessee. They call the game like their quarterback running back combo is Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, but it's Russell Wilson, Travis Homer. Like, what do you do in Seattle? I picked Green Bay because I did not trust Seattle would have the right game plan, and once again, they don't have the right game plan. And Russell's so good, they won't fire the coordinator because they won a playoff game, won 11 games, when the